Who are you?
I am Jello Biafra, and you're not, which I'm sure you're thankful for every single day.
Jello, this is the 14th time I've interviewed you.
My God. That's you have the record by far, I'm sure. Oh, I just did Morat for Kerrang too, and he's been doing me for years for various British publications.
But I actually haven't talked to you since 2013. So there's been 7 years for me to make it to number 14.
Boy, it does fly by, doesn't it? Time fries when you're overworked.
And right off the bat, Jello, I have a gift for you right here. I'm going to share it right now. I'm not sure if you already have this gift.
Oh, wow.
So
Nice.
Do you have this record? I'm
I
going to give this to you.
have the record. I've never seen that picture sleeve.
This is actually the 45. If we go along a bit more, you can see it along. Could you tell me about your idol, your role model, Frank?
Oh, he's one of many role models I've had over time, but that was a very pivotal part of my growing up. I mean, it was about the only time I seriously, Walter Mitty Cinderella, wanted to be anything except somebody on stage in a kick-ass rock band. I mean, 1965, Beatlemania still going on, fall, second grade. My father blundered into a rock and roll station trying to get me to go to sleep. Leave it there, Dad. I like that. I like that. And that might be the biggest regret he's ever had in raising his child, because then there was no stopping me, and I wasn't going to listen to Beethoven, although I'm not trying to slam Beethoven, or opera with my mom or anything. I was all about the harder stuff. Beatles, sure, because that was one people had heard of. The Rolling Stones, Paul Revere and the Raiders, whose influence on the American 60s garage sound has never quite properly been credited, because they were on the radio all the time and they had 2 TV shows. Why do so many bands sound like them? Because they heard and saw them a lot. Anyway, then about the next year, third grade, was when the Batman TV show came on. And of course, just like when I watched superhero cartoons a few years later, I immediately identified with the villains. They were so much more fun. And so then when people are writing their little what they want to be when they grow up things for third grade, they, yeah, you got really small on the screen now. My God, now they're trying to sell me an Adobe Flash player. Go away. Anyway, I hope I can get you back on the big screen. We're real tiny now.
We're sharing the screen actually now of this Frank Gorshin record, a gift for you. You do not have this, Jello. You don't have this record. Well, you don't have the picture sleeve.
Oh my God, they're trying to sell me an Adobe Flash player in the middle of this shit. I can't get out of it. Okay, if I quit Safari, I'm going to lose you. All right, here we go. Okay, so basically they wanted everybody in third grade to do as usual. What do I want to be when I grow up? And, I want to be a policeman. I want to be a baseball player. And then the girls, I want to be a nurse. Me, I want to be the Riddler. I want to be the Penguin, the Jokers. Those are my role models. Now, all I need to find, in addition to the Burt Ward who played Robin single that was produced by Frank Zappa, so it's stratospherically out of our range to actually get a hold of one, Burgess Meredith made a record as the Penguin, too, with a picture sleeve, and I've never even seen that one.
This is for you, Jello, though. This is an actual gift for you. I'm going to mail this record to you. I'm going to mail it to you.
Thank you, Nardwuar.
Jello, do you still have some body hair from 1978?
Actually, I do. Yeah, because 1978 was the fall 78. I had really gotten into punk rock, kind of knew what I wanted to do in Walter Mitty's Cinderella world, but I was going to University of California at Santa Cruz, which turned out to be kind of a hippie school in the wrong way. And I'd got there to get away from Boulder, where I grew up, and found another Boulder kind of. But I also still had really long hair, which was left over from the time that was what scared the shit out of people. And I kind of knew it didn't anymore, but I'd been to punk shows in England when I went through in 77 and didn't cut the hair off yet and whatnot, and didn't really want to, except eventually I was like, okay, now it's time. I was cranking the pistols really loud with my dorm door open to annoy everyone else in the hall, and whipped out a pair of just crude little scissors. I don't think they were child's lefty scissors, but one step up, and cut off all my hippie hair. And so my hair was about 1/4 of an inch long, and kind of looked like a crude concentration camp haircut, which I've done from time to time ever since. But so I basically put all the hippie hair in a bag, sealed it up, and nailed it to the outside of my dorm door, right alongside of the Son of Sam drawings they found on his apartment and other fun things I would put up to kind of stake out an identity there.
I should have got you to dig out the hair instead of the records. Is the hair in a house somewhere?
I might even know where it is, but I'm not going to go look for it now. I found it again a while back. I couldn't believe I still had it.
Jello, I was curious. Did the Ramones remember you from Denver? You saw the Ramones in Denver. Did they remember you at all?
Well, I saw them in March of 1977 when they scared the living daylights of most of the cocaine cowboy major label country rock mafia types, since Denver and Boulder were ground zero testing grounds for who was going to be the next Eagles or the next Firefall, which made for one miserable youth, except for finding everything from Funhouse sealed for a dime to Music Machine for 50 cents and MC5 for 1/4 and stuff like that. It did have its advantages, but that was such a life-changing event for so many people. They were so good, so powerful, and I kind of giggled at them before that. Short songs, beat on the brat with a baseball bat, now I want to sniff some glue, and that's the only lyrics and stuff like that. So me and my prog rock and space rock head friends would smoke a bunch of weed, trip out on import records and stuff and krautrock, and then I'd put that on, and we were all kind of amused, to the point where one of them, after I saw that show, said, "You mean you take the Ramones seriously now?" I was like, "Oh, you bet I do." They were so good, so powerful, and so simple. It's like, God. And even Joey's stage moves are so simple. Even I could do that. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I will do that. Those gears were turning in the heads of all kinds of people at the show that night. So many bands and other things came from that one Ramones show. Dead Kennedys, Angst, the band on SST, because the two brothers who play guitar and bass were high school classmates of mine and stuff. And Joseph, the younger one, was already really into punk and collecting records and whatnot. And so, he was the one who was more aggressive than me. And then he comes this back down. "I was just backstage talking to the Ramones." "You can talk to a rock star? Really?" And so then we all went back and hung out with the Ramones. You've probably seen the picture of me and Joey, and the third guy in the picture is Joseph Pope, who later was the bass player and kind of the leader of Angst. And also Don Fleming was there. He was stationed in the Air Force, at Lowry Air Force Base at the time, went to punk shows, and he of course went back east and did Velvet Monkeys and Gumball, and before that the Stroke Band, whose album I've still never found. And the Wax Trax label grew out of that. Jim and Danny and all the people who worked there were there, and they weren't championing electronic disco then. They were championing glam, New York Dolls, and saw punk as an extension of that, to the point where the British guy involved with the store, Mike Smythe, who was flying back and forth to London, bringing biker movie soundtracks to Ted Carroll at the Rock On record store. And of course, what also grew out of the Rock On record store was the Chiswick label that morphed into the Ace label and the Big Beat labels. And what a very important person, Ted Carroll. Anyway, so he was bringing back, aside from incredibly rare and insanely expensive Pretty Things albums that never came out in America, and Downliners Sect even, and stuff like that, he was bringing back punk records fresh out of the stores, you know, and the Sun and some of the other papers freaking out when the Sex Pistols all puked on themselves at a press conference and stuff like that. And Jim and Nash and Danny Fletcher were hanging up all over the wall at Wax Track. This is what we like, Colorado. And then when I heard what was probably Neat, Neat, Neat by The Damned, and that song was so good. Oh, what's that? Just another English punk band. Oh, shit. I have to start collecting 45s now too, or I'm never going to be able to hear this music. And so then another Pandora's box was opened. The Ramones went to Wax Tracks the next day and declared it the best store they'd ever seen. Let's put
Did they remember you? Did the Ramones realize what they created? Did the Ramones remember
me later? I don't remember if they did or not, because at one point I got a handwritten letter from John Cummings, signing it Johnny Ramone, just kind of talking about feelings of why, you know, we're not political, but blah, blah, blah. And for some reason, he wanted me to be clear on that, because apparently they played California Uber Alice in the mix before they went on stage. But of course, Johnny would later reveal himself to be quite conservative and stuff. But and I wrote him back, and I might have mentioned that then. So then a few years after that, when I finally saw the Ramones again, and by then we were about to do the Los Gusanos single and CD EP, which was CJ Ramone's band. So me and Greg Workman of Alternative Tentacles, now Mr. Ipecac Records with Mike Patton, you know, we had free reign of the backstage and chatted with Johnny for a while, and of course CJ and the others. And I can't remember if we talked about the Denver show or not. I mean, I think the Ramones knew that they were planting seeds everywhere they went when they went on that tour, even if they lost their shirts. They were planting all these seeds. Al Jorgensen claims he was at that show too, but the Wax Tracks crew and the rest of us didn't know him then, but he was living in Colorado then. So it is entirely possible. And a bunch of other local bands spun out of that. And then a friend of mine who helped run Trade a Tape and Records, where I got all the cheap records and the 13th floor elevators out of the freebie box, along with Les Baxter and Ema Sumac and other Simon Stokes, other life-changing things. He had a radio show on the independent station in Boulder then called KRNW. And so he talked to Ramones into an interview, and then he talked to the people who ran the venue when he found out the Ramones had time before their next gig, and talked to Ebbets Field, which was mainly all about country rock showcasing and Scientology jazz fusion and that kind of stuff. He talked him into giving the Ramones their own show the next night. And so we got to see the Ramones again, and they needed an opening band. So they got the first Colorado punk band that I hadn't seen yet, called the Ravers from Boulder. And they opened the show. And for the show, suddenly the Ravers needed roadies, as they were called then. So me and Joseph Pope, who later went into Angst, and Sam Turner and John Trujillo, two other friends, we became the Ravers roadies. For the rest of the time, the Ravers were in Colorado before they took Sam with them, and Rick, the manager, moved to New York and had kind of an identity crisis and personnel changes, and changed their name to the Nails, and had that big hit, 88 Lines About 44 Women. Yeah, another band that came out of that one Ramones show. So I felt 10 feet tall. All you people, my family and at school told me what a loser I was going to be. I would never amount to anything. I'm a roadie for the Ravers now. That's what that meant to me at the time.
Jello Biafra, you mentioned going to England. What did you think what did you think about Rest in Peace, Genesis P. Orridge, Throbbing Gristle? Because he has said punk was too traditional. Punk was too traditional.
Well, from his lens, it probably was, from where he was coming from. I mean, Throbbing Gristle was one of many projects, I think the only audio one maybe, that came out of this group called Cum Transmissions. And I believe they might have done performance art and maybe fetishy stuff. I don't know, and other kinds of things. And then Throbbing Gristle was the one that they said they were introducing one of the Search and Destroy things, whose best known public form is Throbbing Gristle. So they were coming from a completely different place and were already well underway when punk hit, doing their thing.
John Belushi got you on Saturday Night Live, but you were vetoed and they got Fear?
Yeah. I mean, he came backstage and we talked for a while. After we played a show at Irving Plaza on Dead Kennedy's 1981 tour. And I felt I gave him the courtesy of warning him I was kind of going after him on a song we didn't play, but was coming on the next album called Terminal Preppy. You know, Belushi's my hero. I lampoon and I ape him. My news of the world comes from Sports Illustrated. I mean, I've still never seen Animal House, but that was kind of based on both what I'd heard about Animal House and his Bluto character, as well as all the animal houses I delivered pizza to in Boulder for about a year and a half, as well as the dorms and, a lot of drunk University of Colorado students. It was a party school. It still is. Thus, things like Terminal Preppy and even Holiday in Cambodia were from those days and inspired by that. And Belushi is actually kind of flattered. He said, yeah, no, go ahead, do it. The sad part is later, somehow word got to me because I was hanging out in New York after the tour. Yeah, we're shooting this movie called Neighbors. Come hang out on the set and stuff. And I was so busy going to record stores and other things that I never got around to it. Who knows? I might have even talked myself into a character role. You never know. He did put a song of ours in that movie, and we actually got paid, unlike the Class movie and several more. But then a little bit later, he wanted to get us onto Saturday Night Live, and they were having none of it because of our name. They did not want us on at all. So at the last minute, we were swapped out for Fear instead, who I think were on tour on the East Coast at that point. And, as you probably know, if you ever saw that, the DC Muscleheads, as they were kind of known at the time, who were in the early stages of Minor Threat and SOA, Government Issue, the DC Youth Brigade, the rest, they knew already from going to a Black Flag show in New York in force that they scared the living shit out of the New York audience, who was not prepared for them at all. So they came up for us too, which made me really happy, a whiff of the West Coast and the East Coast. And one of them was even shaving people's heads by the side of the stage. But they also came up for the Saturday Night Live show, and I suspect it was Mr. Belushi who got them passes and made sure they actually not only got in for the shoot, but had run of the place, because weren't they knocking over potted plants and stuff while Fear played?
Yes, and smashing Halloween pumpkins.
Well, that just goes to show how much clout John Belushi had on that show by then, that they weren't immediately grabbed and thrown out and they did a take two.
Jello Biafra, you were the first guy put on trial for releasing an obscene LP. And I was curious about the history of obscene LPs. And I wanted to share this to you right now.
Oh, do I have to?
Jello, what can you say about
there
this?
There it is. Okay.
How does this, what is the connection between Jello Biafra and Cocksucker's Ball, and how does it all relate? How come they didn't go to trial?
Is that the same Clovers who did Love Potion #9? It wouldn't surprise me if it was. Well, those kind of records were sold kind of under the table, under the counter, brown paper bags. There's a whole series of those. And that one I'm assuming is rhythm and blues, but especially if it's that Clovers. But there were country ones, not really rock and rolly ones, except maybe Tapping That Thing could be argued for that. A lot of them came out under different artist credits too, the Stickball song and that kind of stuff has a very long, rich history, especially in black music, which was years earlier dismissed as race music. And because it was race music that was not allowed on Caucasian radio stations, even though you wouldn't have to see the black people because it was only the radio, there was still that segregationist and stuff, and freaked out that if white people listened to the, smoke too much marijuana, they'd get, influenced by the jungle rhythms of the Negro and fall under the occult influence of jazz, the reefer madness hype that got cannabis banned all these years. The other really horrible thing that Franklin Roosevelt did, besides put all the Japanese American citizens in camps and everything, that's the other really unforgivable one, was when cannabis was banned. But anyway, so there's been a long history. I might even have one, but I have to reach back and find it. There's compilations of this stuff. They're called, and there's both the most blatant, right up front pro-drug songs, especially marijuana, and the most libidinous, explicit sex songs were almost all, as far as I know, by Black artists, because they weren't paying that much attention to the race music stores. For one thing, it might meant being white, you'd have to go into a Black neighborhood and into an African-American themed record store and start looking for them. And they might be able to quick throw you out before you found it. I'm just speculating here. But there's whole compilations of the really filthy language Black records and stuff, as well as there's one called Risky Blues that got around a little more. I think it was put out late 60s, early 70s. And King put it out because they had put out so much of that stuff back in the day, and it was all innuendo. Annie had a baby, and then there was sequels of that. The Hank Ballard, the Midnighters song was on there. Oysters, those good old mountain oysters, and you know what those were in real life, and all kinds of innuendo like that, which made it all the funnier when one of the really square, helmet-headed old biddies who was sitting there with Tipper Gore at the Hearing Her Husband stage on evil, wicked music, leading people to worship Satan, commit crimes, and get people pregnant, and this, that, and the other. That other woman said to a reporter, well, why do they have to do this? I mean, there was a time when rock and roll wasn't that bad. You could just dance to it like a wop, bop, a loop, bop, a lop, bam, boom. She had no idea what Little Richard really was at all, because it was all innuendo.
From 1954 by the Clovers, also covered by Frank Zappa.
Oh, was that not as Zappa? That was before the Mothers, right?
He did that live on one of his tours. He actually covered, because he loved that. And we're speaking, in case you're wondering, to Jello Biafra. And I have another gift for you, Jello, right here. This is
putting me in debt here.
The top 5%. This record. I'm not sure if you have this.
Is this a get rich quick record or something?
The incredible story, which tells you why only 5% of the men in the richest land on earth achieve financial independence.
So is it an entire recitation of our tax code? Especially the new one where they cut, rich people's taxes from about 30% to 11%. And of course, they're then blaming the deficits on we got to cut more money for schools. We got to cut more money for this and that. We got to keep those little kids in cages because we can't afford to put them anywhere else. Especially ironic with that crew is they're the same people who are all about right to life. We're pro-life, but they're so anti-life, they hate kids. They're relentless in cutting education budgets and things like that. Oh, this is Earl Nightingale. And that's a 7-inch then. Okay. Earl Nightingale, yeah, he was one of those, get rich quick things. It was kind of like an earlier version of Trump University, but probably less fraudulent, or at least less blatantly fraudulent. I mean, that guy lasted at least into the 70s, because you used to see ads on TV from him time to buy my book or buy my whatever. You too can live like I do. And there he is in his checkered suit and gassed back hair and stuff. He was a good laugh. I've never seen a record by him before, but I'm not surprised he'd have one of those.
Well,
the other get rich quick one, I have 2 by this guy now. You Can Better Your Best by Glenn W. Turner. I was very excited to find him in the Traded Tape free box, no matter what he was doing, because, and then his testimony was, even a man like me with a hair lip can get rich and blah, 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 blah. The reason it was interesting is because he was already a nationally infamous con man possibly with warrants out for him already. I don't know. He was using everybody's pyramid scam money to construct his own personal version of San Simeon in Florida, and they took him away when he was about halfway through with it and stuff. So I don't know what happened to the Glenn W. Turner mansion or whatever. And that record, ironically, was produced by Bobby Lee Trammell, who was a rockabilly legend a decade earlier.
So there we have the top 5%. That is a gift for you. I will mail this record to you. I will mail it to you because you don't have it.
What, yeah, wait. What happened? What about Frank Gorshin?
No, I will mail that as well. That's another gift for you. And we're speaking right now to Jello Biafra, live from, where are we live? Where are you live from?
San Francisco, California.
San Francisco, California. And we're also joined right now with my friend Roger. Roger, this is Jello Biafra.
Hi, Roger. Why are you bombing my show?
It's by Nardwuar's insistence that I appear here.
Roger has been on the Nardwuar show like 50 times, haven't you? You've been on my show like 50 times.
You have my sympathies, dude. That's a white background, though. Does that mean you're in a mental hospital because of Nardwuar?
Maybe.
Or is it a holding cell?
I mean, we're all in our own quarantines.
I mean, if you're in a holding cell, you didn't do a very good job of killing that dude off.
Boom. And actually, you asked why Roger is here. And actually, I'll share the screen right now. Here is the reason that Roger is here. There is Roger.
And he has a Holiday Inn Cambodia shirt.
What's going on here, Roger? How old were you and what's your connection to Jello Biafra? Jello Biafra, this is your rock life.
It is.
This is your life. That's 1984, I believe. I'm 14. I'm looking awfully happy considering the subject matter of the t-shirt. And I loved the Dead Kennedys. I was loving them back then and I still love them.
What about my newer stuff?
I was at the Guantanamo School of Medicine. I was a photographer actually at your show here in Vancouver.
If you got any good shots, I'd love to see them. Including if you got any of the Subhumans Canada, because that's Brian Goebel. And, you know, he was a good friend, a very dear friend, and we don't have him now.
Well, we will get to that. Again, we're speaking to Roger and Jello Biafra on the Nardwuar, the Human Serviette show. So we continue on here, and we have this flyer from Roger's collection. Right, Roger?
Yeah, this was...
Oh, it was the New York Theater with a crucifix, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was a pretty good show. I thought the crucifix did really well, too. And, you know, Doc had such a short fuse, loose cannon kind of thing. We had no idea if the Vancouver audience that likes to boo people and throw beer cans was going to go after him and he'd flip, or the opposite. And they played great and they won everybody over from the get-go.
And if we continue on here, here's a picture from Discorder magazine taken by William Jans with The Cure on the cover, also a Dead Kennedys review. And the quote is, "The styles and lyrical content of the two lead singers could not have been more different." And as we go into Discorder magazine, we see this picture right here, and we see some Jello Biafra live at the New York Theater on the gig you described.
There you go. That was when you could put a mic cord in your mouth when you had no other place to put the mic and not get sick as a dog afterwards.
And that picture was taken by Dave Jacklin. And you also, Roger, were at the show, right?
Yeah, this was actually, I thought this was cool as well because the Dead Kennedys played for 2 nights. So it was kind of cool. Like, so there was quite a few bands because...
Well, I can't remember if Crucifix was on both nights or just one.
They played on one, but Death Sentence played on the second night, which is one of my favorite bands.
And we go along some more, another Dave Jacklin picture. You at the New York Theater. What do you remember about the gig, Roger? What do you remember about this gig? Like something about Joey Shithead?
Oh, yeah. As far as I remember, Joey from DOA was the roadie that night. And every time he went out on stage to help plug in chords and that kind of thing, the audience would start chanting his name. And he looked really kind of sheepish about it, like, you're not here to see me kind of thing. I'm just here
I
helping
don't
out.
remember Joe ever doing that with us. It's theoretically possible.
He may have been helping one of the opening bands.
Oh, yeah. It would make sense that DOA and Death Sentence might have shared some time together. And I don't remember that. I didn't see that band Industrial Waste I saw on the flyer. And then there was another one too. And I don't know those bands at all.
There was an all-girl band called the Bags of Dirt. They also appeared on there. And if we continue some more down here, we're again with Jello Biafra and Roger. We have a picture of a recently departed Chai Pig, also taken by Dave Jacklin.
Nice. His palm tree hair in full bloom. Yeah. Well, yeah, we were losing people every year now, as we know, and the more ancient we become, the more we're losing people. And then at times, oh my God, it always comes in threes, and these are really close. Am I the third? No, not ready to go yet. I was when I was 20, but not now. So, yeah, I mean, that was probably by the time that the SNFU had more of a name and, play. I don't know if they'd even played in Vancouver when we first encountered them in Edmonton, and then played two more shows in Saskatoon and Regina with them. And the album wasn't out or anything yet. We just heard rumors about them. And I was blown away immediately. And then the next two nights, we really had to work our asses off, especially me, because there was another really good, really unusual, and really theatrical performer who let it flow to the point where he wasn't doing the same thing each night either. It was all coming from wherever it came from. It's almost a lost art now. Both because people just don't want to work that hard, and or some of the, reverse liberal guilt trip stuff that plagued Gilman Street for, what are you, some kind of rock star, if you were too extroverted and stuff. Whereas in the days of Mabuhay Gardens, late 70s, where, DOA came, we met there and stuff, and everybody, Avengers, Dills, and Crime and the Nuns before them played, the pressure was different. People weren't supposed to be the same. Everybody had to be different or nobody cared, in no small part because most of the audience was the people in the other bands. But perhaps that sounds familiar from Smiling Buddha and other places. But then it was also, the thing then was, you better not act like some cock rock, jackass, rock starry type off stage. But when you're on stage, you better show us something. We want to see performing.
And you, Roger, you loved Chai Pig too.
SNFU, I've said that before. When I was in grade 8 in high school, I had SNFU t-shirt, and in order for me to keep it, I had to tell my mom it meant sausages never fry unevenly. And ever since I was a kid, SNFU, and Chai Pig, what a great frontman, so charismatic, and such amazing songs. It's a real shame.
And we continue on with Jello Biafra and Roger. What do we have right here, Roger?
This is Jello on stage with the Subhumans at that show with the Guantanamo School of Medicine that I was lucky enough to be in the photo pit to take pictures at.
God, looks like I'm praying.
Yeah.
We were probably doing something else. Ah, there we are. There's Mike Graham, for once known as Mike Normal, looking kind of normal, and Brian Goebel looking kind of abnormal, like he often did when he was on stage, especially in Rude Norton.
And John Card on the far right.
That is John Card. Cool.
Yeah, this was an intense show because I'd actually never been in the photo area, that little area between the stage and the audience was huge that night, and all ages show, so very young and old punks. It was cool. I actually heard that you were in the audience, Jello, watching this.
Well, that's generally what I like to do. I like to see other bands live, and I like to be close to the stage. So you see the sweat dripping off the guitar strings. It gets harder when Jello selfie, but sometimes people are actually cool enough to wait until there's actually time. Although sometimes, I mean, one in Australia, I was watching a band there, and a guy collared me in kind of a chokehold, and I thought he was going to punch me with his other hand, so I almost punched him. But then a phone came up instead, and that kind of stuff isn't very cool. And it's kind of died down, not died down, but gotten a little more humane. But I still had to write the song No More Selfies, which is on the new album. There's a new Guantanamo School of Medicine album called Tea Party Revenge Porn.
And we can
know it's not going to instantly become dated if we can finally really truly get rid of Trump, and I don't think we have, because the Tea Party Revenge Porn song and the song called Satan's Comb Over was written before Trump even stole the 2016 election. I mean, Satan's Comb Over is a worldwide phenomenon.
So captured by Roger Allen at the Rickshaw in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Roger has been on my show, like I mentioned, over 50 times. He has also played the darts on my radio show. The darts, That's amazing darts.
Well, when are you going to have them on?
I love them and their background, the Love Me Nots, the darts.
Yeah, I first got into them when I saw the Love Me Nots, not knowing who they were, at a little bar way out in the valley in Reseda, California, where they brought me in to be one of the DJs. And there were other DJs too. And we got one last band, Love Me Nots, and I'm packing. Oh no, they wanted to DJ after me, to do it after the Love Me Nots. And so, okay, let's check out this band. Whoa, this is a really good band. And that singer's not only got a great voice, and they got great songs, she's quite the wiggler and wriggler all over her keyboard without missing a note.
Amazing. Any other questions at all for Jello Biafra, Roger?
No, I mean, my only real question would just be about playing with the band The Cramps, because every time I'm with Nardwuar on his show, I mention this concert I went and saw of the Cramps at UBC, which is where we've recorded all the radio programs. And I know the Dead Kennedys played with the Cramps, and I know I know Jello is a huge record collector, but so is Lux Interior. So anything about the Cramps that stands out in your memory?
We never got to meet properly and talk about any of that. I mean, I met him in a high and by, maybe before, no, Dead Kennedys existed by then, when they played Mabuhay, and he was very polite, but, just another guy out of the crowd. And then we were both on the same bill on the same night when they were shooting that now evaporated movie that never even came out on DVD called Erg, A Music War. That was mainly to showcase the Police, because it was Miles Copeland, what a younger brother band, and all the stuff that he had on his IRS label. I don't think they even had REM yet. They might be in the movie, but they weren't. It was a 2-nighter thing at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, and we must have been on the first night. Yeah, there was Chelsea. Then I think we were next. And then that was probably X was after us, unless they were on the net. No, they weren't on the next night. And unless I'm spacing on somebody, it was the Cramps after that. And weirdly, I thought they just did not play well at all that night. It was really just kind of fuming about it. And Miles Copeland overheard me saying that the next day and looked up, "Are you done now?" And then you see them on the screen in Erg, and they look great. It is the Cramps in your face, the way they would want themselves presented and stuff all the way.
Well, thank you so much, Roger, for Zoom bombing Jello Biafra and providing those picks. Keep on rocking in the free world, and doot doo loot doo.
Doot doo.
In the meantime, enjoy Tea Party Revenge Porn. And there's about 5 videos, actually. I've never had official JB video clips before, but then Vancouver's own Annie Kidd started making these collage videos of news footage of a series of electronic songs she was making at home, because she was all cooped up too. We created Putin. She did one of those too. We created Putin.
And you're still listening to Jello Biafra. Go ahead, Jello. Keep going.
Yes, the worst part of the whole Putin story, of course, is he obviously has Dirty Donnie Trump-a-muck by the short hairs, and Trump is afraid of nothing, least of all humanity or being a decent guy or common sense. But he bashes everybody else in the world, including his own employees. He never crosses Putin. Why is he so scared of Putin? People say, oh, it's the sex with the P tape that he's on that Putin has, or it's this, or he's afraid of that. No. What you got to remember about Trump is deep down, his main thing is he's a con man. He was never a success in business. And when he ran out of his daddy's money after pissing that away on one business adventure after another that failed, because he works the bankruptcies laws constantly, partly so he doesn't ever have to pay the people who build Trump Tower or anything like that. He just rips everybody off, and was borrowing money from this bank in New York and that one and ripping all of them off through bankruptcy scams. And finally, they kind of got to talking around 2000 or so, and no American bank would lend Donald Trump any more money for anything. Trump Organization, forget it. You're toxic. You rip everybody off, and you know it. So then he goes and gets money from Deutsche Bank, that German bank who's also been caught, laundering money for drug cartels and Al Qaeda and maybe ISIS and other things. I think he borrowed $300 million or more from them. Has he paid that back yet? No. Just going to do another bankruptcy scheme or trade it for letting them off for all the money they owe the American government for helping crash the economy in 2008. We're going to see that right when he pardons his own family and shit. But I thought, well, then what happens to him after that? Well, who provides us the answer but Eric Trump? In 2009, here they are opening all these fancy new, or by his standards, fancy, cheesy golf resorts all over the place. Yet more Trump stuff. And a golfing magazine is interviewing Eric Trump, who's supposedly in charge of the project. And well, the economy just crashed in 2008. It's 2009. Banks won't lend to anybody. How are you getting the money for this? And he smiles that toothy, creepy grin of his and says, well, we don't use, note the new word use, American banks. We don't need them. We use Russian banks. So in all likelihood, right about now, there's a lot of loans that are due, but Trump had no intention of paying them. He was just going to rip them off too and move on to another victim. The trouble is, you borrow money from Russian banks who have enough money to lend, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, to Trump, and then they're going to want their money back. And even if he doesn't intend to pay it, well, you got to do everything we say, because otherwise we can repossess Trump Tower and call it Putin Tower. We'll take Mar-a-Lago, so you have to stare from the window outside as my best hookers in the world run wild inside, and you can't have any, Mr. Wannabe Jeffrey Epstein. You don't get even to touch them at all, let alone grab them by the pussy. And one thing that fucks with bad Vlad, my agents can poison you, even in your own bedroom, and poison Ivanka too. Bwah-ha-ha-ha-ha. Trump lives in terror of that every single day, which then links up to that tell-all book, the first of the two that Lewis Wolf wrote, mentioning that Trump was hyper paranoid of having his food poisoned. And that's why he liked to have his limo stop at McDonald's on the spur of the moment. They don't know who's buying the food. They can't poison it, blah, blah, blah. Who does he think is poisoning his food? Not just all the people he ripped off putting up his buildings. He knew enough not to cross the mob too often when he put up Atlantic City. No, he's scared if he doesn't keep gorging McDonald's, his cheeseburgers are going to get poisoned by you know who, and he'll literally keel over and do us a favor and die, collapsing in a raked leaves size pile of cheeseburger wrappers in the bedroom on the bed that Melania won't share with him.
And check out all that on your new album and with a cover. We have the cover of your new album right now.
Awesome. Yeah, it's another cover by Winston Smith. very strong image. I was waiting for the perfect record to put that with, and it was never quite the right one. It's been one of my favorites since he may have made that even before he went on that spree that resulted in the cover to the album made with DOA, Last Scream of the Missing Neighbors, The Sky is Falling, and I Want My Mommy with No Means No is another one from that period, and the High Priest of Harmful Matter spoken word album is another one, all from that one period of amazing stuff. I think it was earlier when Reagan was still president that he made that one that I thought was so cool, but Winston kind of forgot about it because there's another Brain and Snakes thing that he thinks is much better that's also hopefully going to be the next Guantanamo release album cover. When we get to that, kind of tie it in with this one. But I thought, my God, that he still hasn't let anybody use that. Winston, it's time. I need that snake eating the brain image. And he was like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that one. I don't even know where the original is. 3 books of his art are now out. And to my utter astonishment, I thought, well, there's a good shot of in this high-res scan. Not in that one. No, oh my God, it's not in any of his books. No wonder nobody took that cover before I got my sticky little paws on it. So finally, it's out for everybody to see. I love it. And I think it captures where we're at right now perfectly. I mean, and it's not going to be black and white on the final album cover that's still, getting made and everything. It's going to be black and silver. The idea of a Revolver, a distributor always wants some kind of sticker on the front saying, hooray for this album, buy it, or reviews from somebody or something like that. And with Itch.io, we even had one of those little phones jumbled squares so you could put your phone on it and sample the band. But anyway, this one, a simple comic book thing with a point. Look here. This is your brain on Trump. And there is the person who picks up the album cover staring into the silver brain in the rattlesnake's mouth, and there's their own face.
And that was part 1 of my interview with
me,
Jello Biafra. Stay tuned for part
2
with Jello Biafra.
That's right.